Okay, I've got far too many slides. What my method is not very considerate. I make PDF of my presentation, and you can read the text. I'm not going to go into the text very much. I want to show you some movies and give you an interpretation of the behavior of young infants in communication in musical ways. And communicative musicality is the topic which we have concentrated on in recent years. One of my inspiring friends is Björkvold, and his notion of the muse within, and his identification of that with a feeling of life in a young child before it can walk. I mean, this child can't walk, but the top half of its body is ready for showing off, and that's human. We walk on 2 feet to liberate every part of our body above the waist so we can show off. Other animals, birds do this with their voice and so on, but we've got much more complex showing off equipment. And we've traced the development of the emotional communication between the baby and other people, especially the mother, but not only the mother. And we have these age-related changes. I'm going to present you a presentation of a baby who's 10 weeks old giving her mother a lecture. And she's at this stage of development, which we call love, which is followed around 4 months or so by a playful period when a lot of baby songs are learned and games are played. And after 9 months, the baby starts to get interested in technical things like how to use a cup or a spoon and all sorts of toys. Now, this is the 10-week-old, and I'll play her. Her mother is just nodding her nose and making occasional sounds. Now watch. Now, did you get it? Now, this is the plot. The thing that's important related to our previous talk is that the pulse is the pulse of syllables in speech. They're grouped in 5 or so sounds, which is a phrase, corresponding with the normal speech pattern. This is the baby making these sounds. Da. She says da. She uses a consonant at 10 weeks. Then the mother. Then she shouts. And then she asks, "Did you get it?" So she makes 3 phrases with a standard timing, and her mother says, at the last syllable, the mother says, da. She learns to speak by imitating the baby. Now, this brings in several things. First of all, the baby is leading. The baby has a sense of rhythm for speech and phrases, and it is the same as the normal pattern of adult speech, although the baby doesn't articulate at all. Now, this is a baby that is only about 1 hour old, and it shows astonishing integration of the body for addressing the mother who's taking the photograph. And this baby also addressed her grandmother on day 4 with a posture like John the Baptist, with the right hand raised and the left hand towards the body. And that is a very common oratorical posture. And babies do this. There's research now showing that fetuses have their handedness already determined before birth. In other words, the asymmetry of left and right hand, with the right hand being declarative and the left hand being self-related or apprehensive. Different emotional functions is already present in the fetus. Now, I say that because I think I'm coming to the idea that we have a sense of rhythm for communication, which is related to the sense of rhythm we have for manipulation. And these are 2 things that humans excel at. The baboon was very good at manipulating left and right hand, and it did show handedness. They do show handedness, that is, hand preference for fine detail. But I think it's very important that we are at least three people, our left hand, our right hand, and ourself. And they can be in agreement or disagreement. I sometimes ask the audience, do you know what you're doing with your hands at this moment? And they stop and think, and they say they didn't know what their hands were doing. Anyway, there's Jesus doing the right-handed gesture. Now, I'll skip through these pictures. I want to mention Brazelton because I worked with Brazelton in 1967 when he was beginning to change pediatrics by recognizing that a newborn baby is a person. A very important article, which is a challenge to cognitive neuroscience and interest in the brain, which is interested in information processing and learning. She is a veterinarian, interested in animal health, and a philosopher. She's not a psychologist, she's not a neuroscientist, but she was very critical of cognitive neuroscience and said that she only found 2 books in the literature that satisfied her desire for an interest in movement and time. I see you taking notes of this, but there will be a PDF. All the text will be available, so I don't want you to worry about taking the text. So now, I'm going to show a film now, one of my films, which is very strange.
Wee Wally Winky runs through the toon, upstairs and downstairs in his nechtgoon, keeking at the windy, turling at the lock. Are the bairnies in their bed, it's past 10 o'clock. Wee Wally Winky, are you coming, Ben? The cat's singing grey thrums to the sleeping hen. The dog speltert on the flare and doesna gie a cheep. But here's a walker flatty that winna fall asleep.
Now that's Sheena Wellington, who's a famous Scottish singer, singing a lullaby. I showed this film just like that to the professor of music, Nigel Osborne, and I said, is this an illusion or do those dots appear to be singing the song? He just said, it is the same thing, human movement. What he was saying is that this has the characteristics of human movement, and just about any kind of human movement in story making will fit. What it happens to be is the left and right arm of a 1-week premature baby who's hungry. The left arm is the red dot, and the blue dot is the right arm. And the mother is trying to calm the baby.
See if you start to get annoyed with Mum.
It does, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, that makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's just because they're starting to get hungry a bit now. Oh, what a mover. He's starting to get annoyed now with Mum. That's what's wrong.
Oh, don't want that.
We're getting hungry, is that what's wrong, darling? Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh, we are getting hungry. Hey. Are we getting hungry, darling? The tongue's going. Sorry, darling.
Now, I'm going to show you now an ICU recording made by Saskia van Ries of a baby that is 2 months premature inside the father's shirt being kangarooed. The baby was born 3 months premature, and 8 weeks later the father was kangarooing it because the mother had to have an operation and she was separated. She couldn't kangaroo every day because she had to go away and have an operation, I think a gallbladder operation, which had been postponed until after the baby was born. And the father took over, and he was very proud. He enjoyed it very much. This is a bit noisy, the recording, but I want you to pay attention to their talking together. He's very proud.
Nasera's mother is still too weak after the operation to come and
Can we up
visit.
the volume?
But father comes every day and kangaroos with Nasera. Here she is 3 weeks older
And she
and
smiles.
already has plump cheeks. She is under her father's T-shirt and can already converse well with him.
That's very weak. That's stronger. Now, Stephen Malik recorded this as a spectrograph. The red asterisk is the baby and the father. The father does a pretty good imitation of the baby's coos. It's a bit above middle C. And then it goes baby father, baby father, baby father, baby father. Then the father, then the baby calls and he replies. Then he became distracted. He was no longer listening. He was playing with the clothes or something. 4 seconds later, she called weakly. Then she shouted at him 4 seconds later. Then she spoke again and he addressed her. He talked to her about her little ear. Now, the fast exchange is extremely interesting because it's syllabic frequency, it's iambic. Andante, I mean, it's not, sorry, it's andante. It's also iambic, but it goes baby, father, and if you measure the onset times, which are very sharp, you can get a very accurate measure. This is 0.75 of a second. This is exactly twice, and then 0.65, 0.7, 0.7, 0.7, then 0.85. 0.85 is what a phonetician, an expert in speech, would call final lengthening. The last phrase, last syllable of a spoken phrase is always longer than the others, or tends to be longer. This is a 2-month premature child and a father making a perfect canonical speech phrase with the right syllable frequency and final lengthening. And this is a newborn baby moving its hand in complete synchrony with the impulses of speech. A man is saying to the baby, I'll give you one if it's okay. And the baby goes, I'll give you one if it's okay. And this is something that was discovered by Condon and Sander. It's normal. Not only do babies pay attention to the voice, but they are capable of feeling it in their body and synchronizing with it, which requires anticipation. They couldn't synchronize like this without anticipation. Now, babies are very clever with their hands just after birth. This is a professor of music's daughter when she was 6 hours old, and he thought she was a conductor. Now, actually, when I talk about this in France, I say it's a French chef who's made a perfect sauce. This is a synchrony of pleasure. This is a baby that is 20 minutes old in India, not in an incubator, but dumped on a pillow. A very good reception, I would say. And the baby is a perfectly normal one, but it is tracking a ball with eyes, its mouth, its 2 hands, and 1 foot. And it's doing it because the ball is playing a game with the baby. The visitor to the clinic is doing that. Newborn babies imitate mouth opening and tongue protrusion, and Emma Shinaj has done wonderful work on imitation. She measures heartbeat of the baby, and she finds that she did something no one had ever done before. She tested why the babies imitate, not just that they could imitate, which was a big controversy because both Freud and Piaget said they cannot imitate. She wanted to know why. So after she'd got an imitation, she waited, and the baby repeated the movement to get her to imitate. And she called provocation. The baby wanted a dialogue, and their newborn babies, even premature babies, want dialogue. They don't just want treatment. She's making 1 finger, the baby imitates, then 2 fingers, and the baby imitates. They imitate 3 fingers. Now, they've never seen their hands before. They've had no time for learning. They have a natural instinctive ability to feel the movement in the body of what another person's body does. It goes beyond the singing. Their heart accelerates when they imitate, and it decelerates when they provocate. And this is 15 seconds of dialogue. I think I've got time to show that. She's watching her own hand. She looks at her finger. Then she looks at Emishi. And that's 15 seconds. That's the dialogue. Now, I'm going to... We started work at Harvard with Bruner's wonderful facilities at Harvard. Barry Brazelton and I, with Martin Richards, started a film study of baby movements. Bruner was interested in the origins of language before language. And so he completely undermined the cognitive revolution, which he was part of. In 1960, he and Chomsky and Miller started the cognitive revolution against behaviorism and Skinner. But by 1965, Bruner was already undermining the cognitive revolution by studying babies and finding out that the ideas of cognition and language acquisition device and so on were not adequate. There was something much more fundamental. We found babies made movements with fine film analysis. We discovered the natural rhythms of prospective control of movement. I can't go into that, but all our movements have to be made with astonishing anticipation of how the forces within a very complex body will work together in synchrony. That is nothing to do with conditioned reflexes. It's not reflexive at all. It's prospective, imaginary. Now, what we found, though, when we applied our film to looking at mothers and babies face to face, and they had conversations, we found, as these pictures show, the baby was leading the mother. The mother is imitating the baby, not the other way around. Now, we've looked at babies at the proto-conversational stage, which is after birth at a normal gestational, 40-week gestation. There's a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, where the baby has a very rapid brain development related to the access to visual sensation and so forth. There's a lot of changes happen, and the baby's behavior becomes more organized. By the time they're 5 or 6 weeks old, they can become proto-conversational. They show very elaborate body movements. Mary Catherine Bateson, who was a brilliant observer, she was both an anthropologist and a linguist, not a psychologist, and she found that babies had engagements with their mother when they were from 7 weeks old, and she called them proto-conversation. She gave them that name. And she said that this capacity to interact in movement must be the foundations for all communication, including language. That means syntax and prosody before semantics. Now, here's a little girl in Scotland who became world famous as the performer of a proto-conversation which was analysed by a musician. There she is in Edinburgh University when she was only 6 weeks old, a youngest student at the university, and we filmed her, and she had a 27 seconds a proto-conversation with her mother.
Come on, again. Come on then. That's clever. Oh yes, is that right? Well, tell me some more then. Tell me some more then. Oh, come on. Goo. Goo.
Well, that's how she became famous. I won't show the film. This is Stephen Malik, who was a violinist and a conductor, a very skilled musician, but he was doing research in the physics department at Edinburgh on musical acoustics. And he heard Laura's proto-conversation at when I gave a presentation in the music department, and he said, I have up-to-date software for analysing the musical qualities of the mother's speech. Would you like me to do that? And I said, sure. So we applied for a grant application from the Leverhulme Trust, and we got it immediately, which was very nice. And he started looking at it, and he made this pitch plot. This is Laura speaking to her mother, or mother speaking to Laura, and Laura sharing it.
Come on. Again. Come on then. That's clever. Oh yes, is that right? Well, tell me some more then. Tell me some more then. Oh, come on. Goo.
Pause.
Goo.
That's the end. You can see the wave of energy, which lasts 27 seconds. Now, repeatedly, in the presentation we heard before me, we saw these units that are around, they vary between 20 and 50 seconds. They're the stanza of a baby song in any language, with the 4-line stanzas. And the 4 lines are introduction, development, climax, and resolution, which is a narrative. I think that the most exciting idea that came from Stephen's work was that the baby and the mother were sharing a narrative, a story, a vital process within their bodies that had about the same duration for both of them. Now, he did a microanalysis of this with the spectrographic plots, and these red lines mark sharp consonants which can be precisely timed. The mother is saying k of come on then, and then g of again, come on then, that's clever. And as a musician, he was very impressed that these are 1.5 seconds apart, which corresponds to a musical bar. And there's a vacant bar filled perfectly by the baby. The mother left it vacant, and the baby accepted it with precise timing, and the mother is very pleased. The pitch of her voice goes up, and she makes another bar. Now then, they started doing 4 notes to the bar. The mother spoke very rhythmically, and finally in this bar, the baby completes the 4th note of a bar. So there's the baby filling a vacant bar and completing the 4th note in a bar. I'll just play that. Sorry, I think I will. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not there. Oh well, I'll play it. What you have to listen for when I play it again is this bar which your mother makes rhythmically, and this bar which is exaggerated rhythm, and he puts 4 notes in it, and the 4th one is precisely synchronized by the baby. Now, here they are at the end. I hope this plays. No, sorry, I've lost these. Here the mother is clicking her tongue, and the baby makes 2 sounds with these, still respecting the bar structure. And it's interesting that the first sound is upward, and then the second sound is wandering down. So she goes, She knows the story is going to finish. And then the mother finishes it with these 2 downward notes that come straight down to middle C. Now, I don't know whether this will play.
Come on.
Yeah.
Again. Come on then. That's clever. Oh yes, is that right?
Well, that's the first part of it anyway. Now, this is interesting. He studied timbre, the roughness, the width, and the sharpness. This is very important because it shows the emotional quality of the sounds, which reflect emotional investment in the movements of the throat, which are very special in humans. We've got an anatomy of the throat which enables us to express our feelings in great sensitivity with the tone of our voice. And I don't mean with the front of the mouth, it's with the throat. And this is matched by structure of the inner ear, which makes the human ear especially sensitive to these sounds as messages of feelings. These are not semantic elements. These are prosodic elements or musical elements. And it's interesting that pitch tends to go down and you've got the sharpness going up. Now, these are changes both in the baby and the mother, which indicate changes in emotional energy and anticipation, and they're shared. And the pitch, by the way, is around middle C for both of them. The mother is in the octave above middle C when she's happy and cheerful with the baby. She doesn't have to be too excited. Now, I'll just see whether I can play these things. I'm coming to the end. I want to just finish with some comments. No, we won't worry about that. But there's the same curve that you saw before. Now, he identified these parameters, pulse being rhythmic time, as in the range of times in music and in speech. Quality is expressions of feeling by changes in the pitch, all the various aspects of intensity and timbre. And then narrative is this idea of a coherent sense of exploration of events in time with your feelings. Now, I do want to show, this is the family 30 years later. There's Laura. She said agu to her baby, and I said, you've learnt nothing, because that's what you said to your mother 30 years ago. Now, this is, I have to play this because I'm in Sweden. This is an incredible proof of the inner feeling of the body as a sense of time, of components of the body in what I like to call symphony, not synchrony, but symphony, as in an orchestra. And this is open to sharing with other people. And I think that we have an internal sense of time which is absolutely dedicated to shared life. It's not the same as the one we need for our own performance, except within our own body, performance between different parts of our body. So you can see the left and right hands can have a proto-conversation, even in a fetus. Now, this is Mors Lilla Olla. This baby is born totally blind. And I want you to watch the left hand of the baby as the mother sings a song.
Mors lilla Ulla I skogen finns rosor på kinden och solsken I blick. Läpparna små utan bär och glöd. Bara jag slappat så ensam går. Brummer I brunven lotsar där. Buskarna knakar, en hund visste där. Lurvig pälsen, men Olle blir glad. En kamrat, det var bra, sick och dag. Klappar som björn med händer små. Sträcker fram korgen, se där smaka på. Nalle hans luken med starkt vad där är. Hör du, jag tror att du tycker om bär. Morfar nu sidan gav till ett skrik. Björnen sprang bort, nu är leken förbi. Gå, varför skrämde du undan min vän? Mor lilla, be honom komma igen.
Okay. Now, that baby not only made the professor of music said, she conducts with absolute professional accuracy. She knows all the conventions, up for the pitch and a musical phrase and then closing like that, and with some anticipation. So we checked it very carefully, and at very specific points, the baby leads the mother's voice by 1/3 of a second. Okay. And at other points, they're completely synchronous. We've compared jazz duets that are being improvised, and they obey the same rules with the same values. That is, they show the same periodic, one leading the other, and then also periods of... This is how you negotiate what I call symphony, not sympathy, but symphony. And by the way, the Swedish vowels, as you know, are much more numerous than English vowels. And this has 4 verses, and there are 8 rhyming vowels. And babies tend to vocalize with the final vowel. So we've got, in 4 verses, each verse has 2 rhyming vowels, and they're all different. Okay, we know now a lot about fetal movements. Fetal movements have all of this prospective control that I've been talking about. From even before they have sensory confirmation, they can make well-ordered motor patterns. And they also touch their own body. If they touch their eye, they do it more carefully than if they touch their body. And if they touch a twin, they do it very carefully. They're aware of the difference between themselves and another person, just the same as they're aware of the difference between their body and their eye. They know something about the feelings of negotiation. And this one, Nadia Riceland has found the most astonishing things. Babies don't like mothers smoking when they're in utero. They show disgusted expressions, so she wants women not to smoke while they're pregnant because it's very rude to the baby. And, I mean, it's all very well for airplanes to say no smoking, but uteruses do too, have to have a notice on them. Now, she also found, and this I think is completely astonishing, almost astonishing, is that blind baby conducting with a hand it's never seen. Yes, stop. Yes, that's a prediction. I knew that was coming. When the mother is depressed, the fetus can show a self-comforting movement of touching the body with the left hand. Now, I think this handedness business is extremely interesting because we do have a reciprocity between the left and right hands. The neurochemistry is different in the left and right of the brainstem, with the right side of the body being more assertive and the left side of the body being more apprehensive or accepting. Now, I'll move on. There are lots of, you can look at all these slides later. I just want to make a couple of points and then I am stopping. This is the proto-conversational interaction. It uses organs which are formed in the fetus by 8 weeks for human conversation. All of these organs, including the white sclera of the eyes, which are unique to humans, by the way. No other primate has a white sclera. This is Adam Smith, who was more than an economist. He was really interested in music, and he recognized that there were happiness and sadness were part of our expressive body. Now, I'll leave these things for you to look at. You can read these. These are leaders in the study of emotion in the brain. I just want to end with a couple of things. There's Dan Stern, of course. Among these people, he's one of the great pioneers who shifted us away from psychoanalysis for thinking about the sources of unhappiness and the sources of happiness, the forms of vitality which enable communication. Now, this is the final point I want to make. This is the research in South Africa which indicates that changes in laryngeal vocalization, which she calls grunts, these are sounds like singers make, oh, ah, ah, These are what she calls grunts. She said them combined with right-handed gestures to point were probably the beginning of human communication for tens of thousands of years before speech. And she says that dance and music must have preceded speech. And finally, I want to give an advertisement for a book we've just published on rhythms of relating. Because this is a book where a number of people working as therapists record their experience of coordinating their behavior with the patient or the person that is needing help in a very respectful, symphonic way. Okay, I'll stop.